The quantum sensors of Outpost Zeta hummed in their usual rhythm, monitoring the vast emptiness of the Carina sector. Dr. Vextal adjusted her crystalline sensory appendages, trying to filter out the background radiation that always seemed more pronounced during the station's artificial night cycle. After 3 cycles of monitoring duty, she had grown accustomed to the monotony. The outpost, operated by the collective of advanced species, served primarily as an early warning system for stellar anomalies. That monotony shattered when every sensor array simultaneously lit up with warnings. The readings were impossible. A vessel had appeared at the edge of their detection range, but its energy signature didn't match any known species in the collective's database. Vextal's crystalline form pulsed with anxiety as she initiated emergency protocols. Director Nalthor. She transmitted through the station's neural network. Unknown vessel detected in Sector 7. Energy patterns are unusual. The station's director, a towering arthropodal being, skittered into the monitoring chamber moments later. His compound eyes reflected the holographic displays surrounding them. Elaborate, Dr. Vextal. The vessel's hull appears to be composed of primitive materials, mostly metals and ceramics. But its drive signature, she manipulated the sensor readings with her field manipulators. It's incredibly efficient. The energy-to-mass ratio exceeds our best theoretical models. The vessel's image crystallized on the main display. Its design was angular, aggressive, unlike the flowing organic shapes preferred by collective architects. Dark plates of armor covered its hull, and what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons dotted its surface. Most striking was its size, barely larger than a standard research vessel, yet its energy output rivaled a collective dreadnought. Classification. Nalthor's mandibles clicked with concern. Unknown, but Vextal hesitated. The design appears similar to restricted historical records. Director, I believe this may be a human vessel. The monitoring chamber fell silent. Humans were nearly mythological beings in the modern galaxy. They had been discovered centuries ago, but contact had been minimal. Their system was classified as restricted space after they had destroyed an entire collective exploration fleet in what was later determined to be a tragic misunderstanding. Since then, they had remained isolated in their sector, emerging only rarely and unpredictably. Send standard greeting protocols, Nalthor ordered. All frequencies, all known languages. Before Vextal could comply, the vessel transmitted first. The message was crisp, clear, and in perfect collective standard. Outpost Zeta, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Hyperion. We are tracking a level Omega threat and require immediate consultation with your command staff. This is not a request. Nalthor's exoskeleton rattled, a sign of extreme agitation. Level Omega. That classification hasn't been used in millennia. It's reserved for threats to galactic civilization itself. The human vessel grew larger in their display as it approached, its dark hull seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. Its movement was precise, deliberate, like a predator stalking its prey. But if Captain Chen's warning was genuine, perhaps they were not the prey she hunted. Permission to dock granted, Hyperion. Nalthor transmitted, his decision made. Be advised that our defensive systems will remain active as per protocol. Understood, Director, Captain Chen replied. But your defenses won't help against what's coming. We need to talk. As the human vessel maneuvered toward the docking array, Vextal's sensors detected something else, a distortion in spacetime, barely noticeable at the edge of their range. She adjusted her instruments, trying to get a clearer reading, but the anomaly seemed to shift and fade whenever she focused on it. The docking procedure was flawless, despite the Hyperion's alien design. A sealed connection was established, and atmosphere pressure equalized. Director Nalthor assembled a greeting party, including Vextal and the station's security chief, a massive energy being named Zar-Ith. The airlock cycled, and for the first time in recorded history, humans set foot on a collective outpost. Captain Chen was shorter than Vextal had expected, her form encased in a sleek environmental suit that seemed both protective and tactical. Her face was visible through a transparent faceplate, pink-hued skin, dark eyes that seemed to evaluate everything simultaneously, and black hair pulled back tightly. Behind her stood two other humans, similarly equipped. Director Chen nodded respectfully but didn't waste time on formal protocols. 12 hours ago, we detected a quantum signature that matches an entity we encountered 3 centuries ago, an entity that nearly wiped out Earth before we drove it back into dark space. Our models indicate it's heading directly for this sector. She raised her arm, projecting a hologram that made Vextal's crystalline form dim with terror. The image showed something vast and wrong, a shape that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist, leaving reality distorted in its wake. We've spent centuries preparing for its return, Chen continued. But we can't fight it alone. Not this time. The collective's sensor network is more advanced than ours. We need your help to track it, to predict where it will emerge fully into our space-time. Nalthor's compound eyes fixed on the horrifying projection. Why should we trust you? Humans have avoided contact with us for centuries. Chen's expression hardened. Because if we don't work together, there won't be a galaxy left to save. What's coming doesn't just kill, it unmakes. It feeds on the fundamental forces that bind reality together. We've seen it before. We've bled to stop it before. She paused, her dark eyes reflecting the station's lights. And we've learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to trust. The station's sensors screamed again. The distortion Vextal had detected earlier was growing, spreading like a cancer through space-time itself. Captain Chen looked at the readings and her face paled. It's accelerating, she whispered. We're out of time. Director, your answer. Do we face this together, or do we all die alone? Director Nalthor's decision came swiftly as the spatial distortion grew. Initiate emergency protocols. Transfer all sensor data to the Hyperion. Dr. Vextal, you'll coordinate with the human science team. Captain Chen nodded sharply and pressed a control on her suit. The airlock cycled again, admitting more humans, these wearing different environmental suits marked with complex symbols. Their leader, a tall woman with graying hair and sharp features, introduced herself as Dr. Eleanor Wright, Chief Cinephysicist. Show me everything you have on the anomaly, Wright demanded, her voice carrying the weight of desperate urgency. She pulled out a device that projected a complex holographic interface around her, especially any quantum-level readings from the last 12 hours. Vextal led the human scientists to the primary sensor array. Her crystalline form vibrated with anxiety as she watched them interface their equipment with collective technology. The integration should have been impossible. Human technology was supposedly primitive compared to collective standards, yet their devices merged seamlessly with the station's systems, expanding their sensor range exponentially. There, Wright pointed to a pattern in the data stream. The signature's familiar, but it's different this time. More organized, it's learned. The main display filled with a 3-dimensional model of the spatial distortion. At its heart, reality itself seemed to fold inward, creating patterns that hurt to look at. Around this central point, waves of distorted space-time rippled outward like a cosmic hurricane. 3 centuries ago, Wright explained as she manipulated the display, we thought it was just a spatial anomaly, a natural phenomenon that threatened Earth. We were wrong. It's conscious. It feeds on the fundamental forces that hold the universe together. The more advanced the technology, the more it's drawn to it. Vextal's sensory appendages twitched. That's why human technology appears primitive. You deliberately limited yourselves. Adapted, Wright corrected. We learned to work with basic principles in new ways. Simple materials, mechanical systems, chemical reactions, things it can't easily detect or consume. But we've never stopped watching, never stopped preparing. The station shuddered as another wave of distorted space washed over it. Emergency systems flared to life, compensating for the gravitational fluctuations. Captain Chen's voice came over the comm system. Dr. Wright, We're detecting the same energy signature that preceded the Tokyo event. Time estimate. Hours, maybe less. Wright replied, her hands dancing through the holographic interface. But there's something else. These patterns, they're not random. Look at this periodicity. She highlighted a section of the data stream. Even to Vextal's advanced senses, the pattern was subtle, almost invisible. But once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. The distortions weren't just waves of chaos. They were pulses, like signals. It's calling something, Vextal realized, her crystalline form dimming with horror. Or responding to something, Wright agreed grimly. She expanded the sensor range, incorporating data from the entire sector. Similar distortions, smaller but growing, appeared at regular intervals throughout nearby space. We're not just dealing with one entity. They're coordinating. Director Nalthor skittered into the sensor chamber, his compound eyes reflecting the horrifying display. The collective council is demanding answers. What are we dealing with? Captain Chen joined them, her environmental suit showing signs of recent modifications. New devices had been attached to its surface, their purpose unclear. We called them Void Hunters, she said quietly. They exist partially outside normal spacetime. They don't just destroy worlds, they erase them from reality itself. The only evidence they were ever there is the void they leave behind. How did you stop them before? Nalthor demanded. We didn't, not really, Chen replied. We drove one away from Earth, but the cost. She paused, old pain evident in her voice. We lost entire continents, had to rebuild our civilization from the ground up. That's when we learned our first lesson about them. They're drawn to advanced energy signatures, quantum reactors, zero-point fields, anything that manipulates fundamental forces. The collective's entire civilization is built on such technology, Vextal whispered. Exactly, Wright said, still working through the sensor data. Your worlds are like beacons to them. That's why we're here. We've spent centuries developing ways to fight them, but we need your sensor network to track them, to predict where they'll fully manifest. Another tremor shook the station, stronger this time. Warning signals flashed across multiple displays as systems began to fail. The spatial distortions were intensifying, reality itself becoming unstable around them. Director, Chen's voice was deadly serious. We need to evacuate your non-essential personnel immediately. When these things fully manifest, they'll be drawn to the station's power signature. We can't stop that, but we can use it. Make this place a trap instead of a target. A trap. Nalthor's mandibles clicked rapidly. How? Chen smiled grimly. We brought something with us, a weapon we've spent centuries developing. But we need your help to make it work, Dr. Wright. The scientist pulled up new schematics on the holographic display. The design seemed deceptively simple: mechanical systems, chemical reactions, and what appeared to be carefully controlled gravitational fields. But the complexity was in how they worked together, creating effects that even Vextal's advanced understanding couldn't fully grasp. This is how humanity survived, Wright explained. We stopped trying to overpower them and learned to use their own nature against them. They feed on energy. Fine. We'll give them more than they can handle. As the humans explained their plan, Vextal began to understand why they had remained isolated for so long. They hadn't been hiding. They had been preparing, developing weapons and strategies to fight an enemy the rest of the galaxy had never even imagined. An enemy that was now awakening, hungry after centuries of dormancy. The station shuddered again, and this time the lights flickered. Through the viewport, space itself seemed to be tearing apart, revealing something vast and dark moving in the void between realities. The time for preparation was over. The Void Hunters had arrived. The evacuation of Outpost Zeta proceeded with desperate efficiency as reality continued to warp around them. Through the station's viewports, space itself seemed to fold and twist, creating patterns that defied comprehension. The Hyperion's crew worked alongside collective personnel, converting the station's advanced systems into something new, something that seemed deliberately primitive yet precisely engineered. Power systems at 15% and falling. Vextal reported, her crystalline form dimming to conserve energy. The quantum core is offline. We're running on chemical backup systems as requested. Captain Chen nodded, her environmental suit now bristling with additional mechanical devices. Good. They'll be drawn to any quantum-level energy signatures. Dr. Wright, status of the gravitic array. Final calibrations complete. Wright replied from her station, surrounded by holographic displays showing machine diagrams rather than the expected energy readouts. The mechanical governors are in place. When they try to feed on the station's energy, they'll trigger the trap. Director Nalthor skittered nervously across the command center, his compound eyes reflecting the chaos visible through the viewports. You still haven't explained exactly how this weapon of yours works. Because it's not just one weapon, Chen explained, checking readings on a mechanical gauge. It's a system. Look at your station's normal defenses. Energy shields, quantum torpedoes, particle beams. All useless against them because they feed on that energy, grow stronger from it. So we had to think differently. Wright pulled up a simplified diagram. The Void Hunters exist partially outside normal spacetime. They reach into our reality to feed on energy, especially quantum-level interactions. We can't fight them directly, but we can use their own feeding process against them. The station shuddered as another wave of distorted space washed over it. Through the viewports, they could see them clearly now. Vast shapes that seemed to rotate through impossible dimensions, their surfaces rippling like oil on water but darker than the void itself. 3 of them, approaching the station from different vectors. They're coordinating, Chen observed grimly. They never did that before. Stations, battle positions. The remaining crew moved with practiced precision. The humans had drilled with the collective personnel for hours, teaching them to operate unfamiliar mechanical systems. Vextal found herself at a station that seemed absurdly simple, physical switches and levers instead of neural interfaces, mechanical gauges instead of quantum sensors. First wave approaching, Wright announced. Energy signature matching the Tokyo event. They're starting to feed. The nearest Void Hunter extended what might have been a tendril of pure darkness toward the station. Where it touched, reality itself seemed to unravel. Warning alarms blared as sections of the outer hull began to disappear, not destroyed but erased from existence. Now, Chen ordered. Right through a series of switches. Throughout the station, carefully prepared mechanical systems engage. Massive flywheels began to spin, their momentum creating a carefully calculated gravitational field. Chemical reactions triggered in sequence, creating a cascade of effects that rippled through normal space. The Void Hunter's tendril connected with the station's power grid, eager to feed on its energy. But instead of the expected quantum reactions, it encountered something else, a carefully orchestrated series of mechanical and chemical processes that turned its own feeding process into a weapon. Phase 1 complete, Wright reported. Gravitic resonance established. Initiating Phase 2. The spinning flywheels accelerated, their momentum affecting local spacetime in ways that seemed to hurt the Void Hunters. The entities recoiled, their impossible geometries distorting further as they tried to process what was happening. But they were already caught in the trap. They can't stop feeding once they start, Chen explained to the amazed collective crew. And everything they're feeding on is part of a calculated system. Each reaction leads to the next, creating a feedback loop they can't escape. Through the viewports, they watched as the Void Hunters began to twist in new ways, their forms contorting as the humans' trap forced them to conform more fully to normal spacetime. The more they fed, the more they were drawn into the carefully laid trap. Energy conversion at critical levels, Vextal reported, reading from her mechanical gauges. The reaction is self-sustaining. The Void Hunters tried to retreat, but they were caught in the gravitational fields generated by the spinning flywheels. The more they struggled, the more they were forced to exist fully in normal spacetime. Their impossible geometries began to collapse, forced to conform to the rules of the universe they had tried to prey upon. "Final phase," Chen ordered. "Now we show them why you don't underestimate primitive technology." Wright activated the last series of mechanisms. The flywheels reached their maximum speed, generating gravitational fields that intersected in precise patterns. Chemical reactions triggered in carefully timed sequences, and at the heart of it all, the Void Hunters found themselves trapped in a prison built from the most basic forces of reality itself. "The beauty of mechanical systems," Wright said with grim satisfaction, "is that they follow absolute rules. No quantum uncertainty, no probability fields, just pure cause and effect. And once you understand their rules, you can use those rules against them." The Void Hunters' forms began to collapse, their extra-dimensional existence forced into normal spacetime by the overlapping gravitational fields and chemical reactions. Their impossible geometries shattered, leaving behind only quickly dissipating shadows in the void. But before the crew could celebrate, new alarms sounded. Vextal's instruments, simple as they were, detected massive distortions approaching from multiple vectors. "More of them," Chen said quietly. "A lot more. And now they know what we can do." She turned to Director Nalthor. "This was never just about saving your station. We needed to prove our weapon worked. Because the real battle, that's just beginning." The aftermath of the battle left Outpost Zeta's command center in an unsettling quiet. Where the Void Hunters had touched the station's hull, sections simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but erased from reality itself. Through the viewports, the stars seemed to shimmer oddly, spacetime still settling back to normal after the recent distortions. Captain Chen stood at a makeshift tactical station, studying mechanical readouts while Dr. Wright compiled data from their encounter. The remaining collective crew watched in a mix of awe and terror as the humans worked, their supposedly primitive technology having just accomplished what should have been impossible. "The weapon exceeded expectations," Wright reported, her voice clinical, but her hand shaking slightly as she adjusted her instruments. The gravitational containment field maintained coherence, even when they tried to shift between dimensions. But she paused, frowning at her readings. "The energy conversion rates suggest these were merely scouts." "Scouts?" Director Nalthor's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Those things nearly erased my station from existence. 3 centuries ago, we faced just one of them," Chen explained, her expression grim. "It took everything Earth had to drive it away. The damage." She closed her eyes briefly. "The Pacific crater is still uninhabitable, but we learned from that encounter. We had to." Vextal adjusted her crystalline structure to better process the sensor data they'd gathered. The patterns in their movements, they weren't random. Even their retreat seemed tactical. Chen finished. "They're coordinating in ways they never did before. Learning, adapting. And now they know we can hurt them." The tactical display showed new distortions forming at the edges of their sensor range. Dozens of them, each carrying the same impossible energy signature that defied the laws of physics. But these distortions were different, more controlled, more purposeful. "We need to warn the collective," Nalthor insisted. "Our worlds, our technology. We're completely vulnerable to these entities." "That's why we're here," Chen replied, pulling up a new set of schematics on the display. "What we built here, these weapons, they're prototypes. For 3 centuries, humanity has been preparing for this moment, building an arsenal that doesn't rely on the kind of energy they can feed on. But we need your help to deploy it in time." Dr. Wright expanded the schematics, showing a network of gravitational field generators and chemical reaction chambers, all connected by precisely calibrated mechanical systems. "Each weapon has to be tuned to local spacetime conditions. We need your sensor network, your understanding of quantum mechanics. We can provide the technology, but we need the collective's infrastructure to deploy it on a galactic scale." Another alarm sounded, a deep mechanical tone that seemed to resonate through the station's remaining structure. Vextal checked her instruments, her crystalline form pulsing with anxiety. Multiple signals detected. The pattern, It's changing. The tactical display filled with new data. The distortions they detected earlier were converging, forming complex geometric patterns that seemed to fold through higher dimensions. At the center of these patterns, space itself began to tear open. "No," Chen whispered, her face paling. "They're not just coordinating. They're combining." Through the viewport, they watched as reality split apart like torn fabric. From the gap emerged something vast, a construct of impossible geometries and void dark surfaces that made the previous entities look like insects in comparison. Where it touched normal spacetime, physics itself began to break down. "The Tokyo event," Wright said, her voice shaking. "This is what we glimpsed before we drove them back. Their true form." The entity's presence began to affect the station's systems. Quantum circuits failed completely. Advanced sensors went dark. Even the artificial gravity flickered. Only the mechanical systems the humans had installed continued to function reliably. "Director," Chen turned to Nalthor, her expression deadly serious. "Your station was never the real target. They were testing our defenses, learning our capabilities. Now they know we can hurt them. And they're gathering for a real fight." "What do they want?" Vextal asked, watching as more tears in reality began to appear throughout the sector. "Everything," Wright answered grimly. 3 centuries ago, we thought they were just hunting energy sources. But we were wrong. They don't just feed on energy. They feed on possibility itself. Every advanced civilization, every world that pushes the boundaries of physics. They're all beacons, drawing these things from whatever dark dimension they inhabit. Chen pulled up a galactic map, overlaid with predicted arrival patterns for the Void Hunters. "This is an invasion. They've been waiting, watching as the galaxy's civilizations grew more advanced, developed more powerful technologies. And now that the quantum energy signatures are strong enough, they're coming to feed." The massive entity outside the station began to move, its impossible form rippling as it oriented itself toward the nearest populated system. More tiers in reality were appearing, each one disgorging new horrors into normal space. "We have hours, maybe days before they reach the first major populations," Chen continued. "Every quantum reactor, every zero-point energy field, every advanced power source in the galaxy is going to draw them. And this time, they're not just hunting. They're going to war." Director Nelthor's compound eyes reflected the chaos visible through the viewport. "How can we possibly fight something like this? Even your weapons." "Our weapons work," Chen interrupted. "But you're right. They won't be enough on their own. We need to combine human ingenuity with collective resources. We need to teach your people how to fight an enemy that feeds on advanced technology. And we need to do it fast." The station shuddered as another wave of distorted spacetime washed over it. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to be dimming as reality buckled under the strain of so many extra-dimensional intrusions. The battle for Outpost Zeta had been won, but the war for the galaxy's survival was just beginning. The next 12 hours transformed Outpost Zeta into something unprecedented, a fusion of human ingenuity and collective technology. Under Captain Chen's direction, ships from both civilizations arrived carrying equipment and personnel. The humans brought their mechanical weapons and chemical systems, while the collective provided their quantum sensors and advanced computational abilities. "Status report," Chen demanded, standing in what had once been the station's quantum computing center. Now it housed a hybrid command system, holographic displays powered by chemical reactions, mechanical computers working alongside salvaged quantum processors running at minimal power. 6 major rifts detected, Vextal reported, her crystalline form interfacing with both human and collective systems. "The largest entity is moving toward the Centauri cluster. Population 12 billion. If their quantum technology remains active, they'll be drawn right to it." Wright finished, her hands dancing across mechanical controls. "But look at this pattern. The smaller entities aren't just following the large one. They're maintaining a specific geometric formation." The tactical display showed the truth of her words. The Void Hunters moved through space in an intricate dance, their positions forming complex patterns that seemed to ripple through multiple dimensions. Where these patterns intersected, reality itself grew thin. It's not just an invasion force, Wright realized, her eyes widening. It's a lattice. They're trying to create a permanent breach between their dimension and ours. The implications hit everyone in the command center. This wasn't just about feeding on advanced civilizations. It was about transforming this reality into something more suited to their existence. Trillions of lives across the galaxy would be erased, reality itself rewritten. New contact. A collective sensor operator called out. Massive fleet emerging from hyperspace. It's the collective defense force. Through the viewports, they watched as thousands of ships appeared. The most powerful fleet the collective had ever assembled. Capital ships larger than cities, bristling with quantum weapons and zero-point energy fields. Under normal circumstances, it would have been an overwhelming display of force. No, Chen whispered. They'll draw every Void Hunter in the sector. They need to power down now. But it was too late. The vast entity they'd been tracking suddenly changed course, drawn to the fleet's energy signatures like a moth to flame. Space twisted around it as it accelerated, reality buckling in its wake. The smaller entities moved with it, maintaining their geometric pattern. All stations, Shen's voice carried across all frequencies. Execute Protocol 0. Now, throughout the sector, human ships appeared from hiding places where they'd been waiting. Their dark hulls absorbed light, their mechanical systems barely registering on sensors. Each carried components of the weapon they tested at Outpost Zeta, but modified, improved. Collective Defense Force, Wright broadcast. Power down your quantum systems immediately. Switch to chemical backup power. Your energy signatures are drawing them in. For a moment, it seemed the collective commanders would ignore the warning. Their ships maintained formation, quantum weapons charging. Then the first Void Hunter reached their lines. It didn't attack. It simply passed through one of the capital ships. Where it touched, matter ceased to exist. The massive vessel wasn't destroyed. It was erased, taking its crew of thousands with it. Reality itself seemed to shudder at the violation. Now they understand, Chen said grimly. Vextal, signal the human fleet. Begin gravitational web deployment. The human ships moved with practiced precision, taking up positions that mirrored the Void Hunter's geometric pattern. As the collective fleet powered down, retreating to safe distances, the humans began their counterattack. Massive flywheels spun up across multiple ships, generating intersecting gravitational fields. Chemical reactions triggered in precise sequences, creating waves of effects that rippled through space-time. Each human vessel became a node in a vast web of mechanical forces. The Void Hunters reacted immediately, trying to shift between dimensions to escape. But the humans had learned from their previous encounter. The gravitational web didn't try to trap them in normal space. Instead, it used their own dimensional shifting against them. The pattern, Vextal observed, her crystalline form pulsing with sudden understanding. We're not just copying their formation. We're inverting it. Wright nodded, pride evident in her expression. 3 centuries studying their mathematics, learning how they move between dimensions. Now we're using their own geometric principles to turn their strength into a weakness. The vast entity at the center of the Void Hunter formation writhed as the human fleet's gravitational web began to affect it. Its impossible geometry started to fold in on itself, caught in a trap made from the very laws of physics it had tried to violate. All ships, full power to the flywheels, Chen ordered. Drive them back through their rifts. The battle that followed defied conventional description. The human fleet's mechanical systems generated patterns of force that pushed against the fabric of reality itself. The Void Hunters fought back, trying to feed on energy that wasn't there, attempting to erase ships that had already accounted for their dimensional attacks. In the end, it came down to the simplest of principles: cause and effect, action and reaction. The human weapons didn't try to destroy the Void Hunters. They simply forced them to obey the fundamental laws of the universe. One by one, the smaller entities were driven back through their rifts. The tears in spacetime began to heal as the human fleet's gravitational web sealed them. Finally, only the vast central entity remained, its form contorting as it fought against the forces constraining it. "Something's wrong," Wright called out. "The primary rift isn't closing. It's growing." The entity's death throes were tearing space apart. The gravitational web contained it, but the strain was causing human ships to fail. Mechanical systems reached their breaking points as reality itself groaned under the stress. "Collective Defense Force," Chen broadcast. "We need your help. Power up your quantum sensors only. Full power, focused on these coordinates. Don't fight them, just observe them." Understanding dawned on Vextal's crystalline form. The uncertainty principle. "Exactly," Wright confirmed. "By observing them at the quantum level, we collapse their quantum waveform," Chen finished. "Force them to exist in a single definite state." The collective ships powered up their quantum sensors, focusing overwhelming observational power on the entity. Under the combined effect of mechanical forces and quantum observation, the vast being's form finally collapsed. The rift sealed with a reality-shaking burst of energy, and the battle was over. Hours later, as recovery efforts began, Captain Chen stood with Director Nalthor in Outpost Zeta's observation dome. The sector still showed scars from the battle, regions where spacetime had been damaged, places where matter had been erased from existence, but reality was healing. "We've received word from the Collective Council," Nalthor said. "They're calling for an immediate sharing of technology and knowledge between our peoples. They want to understand how you fought them." Chen smiled slightly. "And we need to understand your quantum science, your sensor networks. Neither of us can face this alone. They'll be back, maybe not for years, maybe not for centuries, but they'll return. And we'll be ready," Vextal added, joining them. "Together."